It's quite windy outside, so I decided to do this episode inside. I'm in my main cabin, and in front of the this painting I painted some time ago, at least 40, 45 years ago, maybe even more. Here it is. I brought eggs to the museum, set a tripod, not the tripod, the easel in front of the original. And it took me probably a year to do this copy, pretty much stroke by brush stroke. At the time, I had a project going on in my life to do a copy of every major art movement in the history of Western art, starting with Renaissance. And I didn't care how long it would take me. If it would take me 100 years and I live that long, so be it. This is how I kind of thought that was the real way to learn how to paint. Because back then, I wanted to be an artist because my acting career didn't work. I started with Renaissance, which technically, if you look at painting as the technical endeavor, was the most complicated, the most difficult. Because then came Baroque, which was also pretty hard. It also involved veiling and glazing, but not extempore anymore. They did it all with oil paints. Then came Realism or French Academy, and then came a couple of other movements, something like Pre-Raphaelites, which I totally got into. I still believe it's my favorite movement of art, Pre-Raphaelites, which is kind of just the name itself is totally cool. Raphael, as we know, was a late Renaissance painter, Roman painter, that lived at the time of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, um, among all kinds of other amazing artists. But Pre-Raphaelites came almost late 19th century. So why did they call themselves pre-Raphaelites, which Raphael lived probably 17th century, something like that. Don't quote me on the dates and names, and Caravaggio is another one that's my favorite that lived at the times of Raphael. But don't quote me on those historical names and facts and everything. This is all my opinion. This is all my knowledge. It might not be very accurate. So I'm not even sure why they call themselves pre-Raphaelites, but it's some kind of a very mystical, um, romantic movement, fairy tale, legends, and it just kind of like when I look at the pre-Raphaelites works of art, it sets me into this dream fantasy world that is full of happiness and joy, except for a few paintings. There's one called Ophelia, painted by one of the pre-Raphaelite painters, and Ophelia killed himself, killed herself by drowning. So then came Impressionists, which was much easier to copy, but I didn't get a chance to because I copied maybe three movements and then years went by and I stopped because life happened. And then after Impressionism, which was much easier, as I said already, then came Expressionism, which is much easier. Then came abstract painting movement, which was nothing to it. You just throw a bunch of paints on the canvas and call it a day. And then came conceptual art. You basically spit on a wall, and that's art. So, unlike if you draw the parallel to science and art starts with really, really, well, at least height of Western art, really complicated technique, and then goes to basically nothing. Science, they invent the wheel, make all kinds of horse carriages and stuff, windmills, and then it gets so complicated that a friend of mine who's into programming and stuff tried to explain to me how computer chip works, the principle of it. He drew a basic diagram and said, well, this whatever pi, goes this way, then it dips down, then some other letter, some other thing, this and that, then it goes up, and then it goes out. I had no clue what he was talking about, and my brain just like went, no, we're not going there. I consider myself a good amateur mechanic, which means I'll fix my boat, even if it kills me. But don't ask me to fix yours, because I have no idea how long it's going to take me. I have to do research. I have to break a couple of things to get to the problem, then fix those things I broke, and then maybe, if I'm lucky, fix your motor. So I might have to charge you $1,000 for a $10 job. So you don't want me to work on your boat. I don't want to work on your boat. I'll work on my stuff. Anyway, um, it's kind of almost ironic, those two parallels, art and science, how from very complex it goes to almost nothing, and then from science, from almost nothing, goes to extremely complex. In my personal opinion, the way I see art is this something, this entity that's done by a human, uh, that another person created something that most of us actually afraid to go there, afraid to express ourselves because we have jobs, our daughters go to schools, we have bosses, we have friends, judgmental friends that we love dearly. So you don't really want to express those fears. You don't want to express those doubts, those agonies that we went through or still go through. But there's this guy artist who's not afraid, who expresses it. And when you look at his work of art or listen to it, it just grabs you. It just gives you this profound meaning, profound joy that fills some kind of a void We have so many voids, so many different kinds of voids. But I personally have this artistic void that kind of like a strong, beautiful work of art stops me in my tracks. And I just find myself not even able to pull myself away from it. And I stare at it and in this very unique joy and look at it and feel that little part of void that needed to be filled. Some mornings I wake up and I say to my wife, I feel like looking at a good painting today. And that's what, to me, art is. Today, for example, last weekend, Art Basel in Miami and Miami Beach ended. I didn't bother going to one single gallery, looking at one single work of art, because for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, in my personal opinion, art reached dead end. Once I was in Vegas, years and years ago, and I was going through this breakup. And breakups, she left me, but I probably pushed her away because of old me. So here I was, confused, chaos, not understanding why, how, where, walking down the street, the main street of Vegas, and I saw Venetian Hotel, one of the main hotels in Vegas, and there was a poster of exhibition of artwork from, I think, Hermitage, Philadelphia, from some big museum. So I was like, hey, I'm in the mood for a good painting. That sounds good. So I go inside. I see Rembrandt, nice. I see Van Gogh, nice. Velasquez, this and that. Okay, nah, not exactly what I'm on the mood for. In the mood. Then I go to this large, big room, white room, and there's only one humongous painting in front of me by Jackson Pollock, a drip painting, a total chaos. I stood in front of that painting, and that painting told me 100% exactly how I felt at that moment. It stopped me in my tracks. I was frozen in front of it for who knows how long. And that was art, even though it was abstract. I'll see you next episode.